Hey everyone, in this video I am continuing my Hellboy coverage covering the Conqueror Worm story arc. This is a really fun one because we got Hermann von Klempt, the Nazi that was just a head in a jar. Well, he's coming back in the story. We got some mechanical cyborg war apes showing up. We got this old hero Lobster Johnson in the mix as well. Just a really fun storyline. With some epic stakes. So let's dive into it. The Conqueror Worm. Hellboy Omnibus Volume 2 Part 2. Conqueror Worm. Written and art by Mignola. Conqueror Worm, Chapter 1. Our story begins with the flashback to 1939. To Hunt Castle in Austria. It is right in the middle of World War II. A hero known as Lobster Johnson is storming the castle, leading a group of US soldiers on a secret attack on a Nazi space program that is operating out of this castle. Let me tell y'all a little bit about Lobster Johnson. So Lobster Johnson is a vigilante hero within the Hellboy universe. He even has his own spin-off series of comics. So, he was a vigilante. He operated in New York City during the 1930s. He had a reputation for violence, and he killed various mobsters. And he burned his trademark lobster claw symbol into their foreheads. In modern times, though, the general public believes that Lobster Johnson is only a fictional character. He was not, though. He was real. Alright, so this Lobster Johnson, along with a whole bunch of US soldiers, is storming this Nazi castle. We see inside the castle, the Nazis are preparing to launch a rocket. The astronaut inside that rocket is a scientist named Ernst Oeming. Nazis ask Ernst if he's all good. Ernst gives a thumbs up. The Nazis prepare to launch that rocket. Ernst inside the rocket says, "Send me into the dark and I will live again and return." Just as the Nazis are about to launch that rocket, Lobster Johnson, along with his backup, enters the room. He points his gun and shouts, "Here is the claw!" The soldiers shoot the Nazi scientists, but not before the rocket explodes and takes off into the air. As the rocket takes off, it burns the castle down below behind it, killing everyone inside, including Lobster Johnson. 61 years later, in the current day in this comic, director of the BPRD, Thomas Manning, is briefing Hellboy and Roger the Homunculus on the events that happened in that castle all those years ago. Thomas Manning, he talks about the physicist Ernst Oeming, who we know is the astronaut that was in that rocket. Manning describes him as the scientist of the Third Reich, often described as the Nazi Einstein. He was so close to giving Hitler the atomic bomb. But on January 1st, 1939, he was assassinated, blown up in a car, along with all of his notes. And then his body was taken to Hunt Castle. And on March 20th of 1939, American troops went in to investigate that castle, and it blew up. Hellboy, hearing this story, mentions that he heard that this was the last Lobster Johnson mission. Manning, he denies the existence of Lobster Johnson, saying, "The Lobster was a fictional character created in the pulp magazines, made popular briefly by a couple of particularly bad movie serials." Hellboy takes offense. He says, "They weren't that bad. And what do you mean, fiction? Back in the 30s, a lot of mobsters turned up dead with the lobster's claw burned into their foreheads. And there were also rumors of other weirder stuff." Manning to this responds, "I've heard all the stories, but it is the official position of the US government that there was no Lobster Johnson." End of story. Back to Hunt Castle. No one knows what caused the explosion and fire there. The Russians found papers in Berlin outlining a Nazi space program, but no one ever gave the theory any serious consideration. Until 2 days ago, NASA took this picture of a comet on a collision course with Earth. And if you'll look at this enlargement of the comet, we can actually see it's a photograph of Ernst Oeming's Nazi space capsule. Hellboy asks, well, those idiots managed to shoot something into space and it's been floating around there all these years and now it's just finally crashing down, right? Thomas Manning says, the object has altered course 3 times in the last 24 hours. If it doesn't alter it again, it will land directly on top of Hunt Castle in about 16 hours. We have no idea what to expect if that happens. Maybe nothing, but maybe something bad. That's why we want you two up there. Roger the Homunculus, he asks, because we are the most indestructible? Hellboy tells Roger, hey, nice to know we're good for something, huh? Thomas Manning then introduces Hellboy and Roger to a woman named Laura Karnstein. She is Austrian secret police. She will be their local guide, taking them out there to that castle. Manning asks Laura if she can take Roger outside. He needs to talk to Hellboy alone for a minute. So as Laura and Roger leave, Hellboy and Manning have a quick talk. They discuss Roger. Manning believes that Roger is making really good progress. He's adjusting better and faster than anyone's ever expected. He's really adapting to the 21st century ideas and technology. But still, Manning doesn't fully trust him. Manning informs Hellboy that Roger has been fitted with a small bomb, large enough to kill him. When Hellboy learns this, he is furious. He says, "Excuse me?" Manning tells Hellboy, we had no choice. He killed Bud Waller, and he sucked the life out of Liz Sherman. Hellboy, defending Roger, says, Jesus Christ, he was in an abandoned science project, gathering dust in a Romanian basement for 500 years. When Liz zapped him to life, he freaked out a little, who wouldn't? But how many lives did he save, including mine, when he melted his brother, the giant human fat monster? And then he volunteered to zap Liz back to life at the cost of his own life. Look, I'm sick about what happened to Bud, and so is Roger. I know it, but this sort of thing happens in this line of work. And look, Liz Sherman is one of my best friends, but when she was 11 years old, she burned 32 people to death. When are you gonna put a bomb on her? Manning tells Hellboy, don't be ridiculous. Liz is human, Roger is not. I don't like this any more than you do. I'm just telling you what I've been told. Roger cannot be allowed to jeopardize other agents. He is considered expendable. Take this. Manning then gives Hellboy the detonator that will kill Roger. Hellboy is to use it, if deemed necessary. Hellboy, he takes the detonator and he storms off, but he is not happy about it. As he leaves Tom, he tells him, you know, I'm not human either, remember? When are you guys gonna put a bomb on me? Hellboy, he joins Laura and Roger outside, and they begin their walk to the castle. As Tom Manning is left at their remote base there watching from a distance, all of a sudden, a little card is tossed to Tom. The card has a little picture of a lobster claw on it, and it says the word fiction? ? Somehow Lobster Johnson from beyond the grave is upset that he's been called a fictional character, and he somehow has tossed this card to Tom. Hellboy, Roger, and Laura are slowly making their way to the castle. Along the way, they run into an old man. The old man gives them an ominous warning saying, turn back. Turn back. The way ahead is haunted. Ghosts come down from the castle. They will pluck at you and cause you to fall. And when you are lying smashed in the rocks, they will come, all of them, and drink your blood. As this old man is talking to them, the wind blows his coat open, revealing a Nazi uniform. Hellboy, as soon as he sees that Nazi symbol on the outfit, yells, Nazi! Hellboy rushes the old man and whacks him back to the ground. Laura tells Hellboy, though, to back off. She'll deal with this man. So Hellboy and Roger, they walk on, and Laura, she walks over to the old man. She asks him if he's alright. He answers, yes. The old man, looking at Laura, then comments, girl, I know you. Laura, she shoots the old man multiple times, and then she pushes him off a nearby ledge, and he falls down to the snowy cliffs below. Hellboy, Roger, and Laura walk on. They now see the snowy castle remains in the distance. Meanwhile, that old man they met just moments earlier, the one that Laura shot and kicked down the cliff, well, he fell down on the cliff below, but then he stood up. And as the old man stands back up, his coat gets blown open once again, revealing a lobster claw on his uniform. It turns out that this old man was the spirit lingering of Lobster Johnson, still around the castle. Now, why was Lobster Johnson wearing this coat in the first place? I'm not fully sure. Maybe the Nazis found his dead body later on and put the coat on him, or maybe he was just cold, even though he's a spirit, and I thought it would keep him warm. I don't know. I don't think it really matters, though. Hellboy, Roger, and Laura are very close now to the castle, but Laura, she then runs up ahead of Hellboy and Roger. Hellboy warns her to stop going ahead without them. It's not safe. That's why him and Roger are here, but Laura, she just shouts back, "I have to make sure the way's clear." She refuses to listen. As soon as Laura is far enough away, all of a sudden, Hellboy and Roger get shot at from some sniper fire in the distance. Hellboy and Roger get thrown back, and Roger, he almost falls off a cliff. He's hanging on. Hellboy manages to grab him. Hellboy wants to pull Roger back up. All of a sudden, they hear Laura screaming out in the distance, saying, "Help me!" Roger tells Hellboy, "Save her." Hellboy is refusing to let Roger fall, though, so Roger, he forces Hellboy to drop him, opening Hellboy's hands, and Roger, he falls down to the depths below. Hellboy, aggravated, has no choice. He rushes at the sniper's position. He is evading some of the bullets, but many of the bullets are just bouncing off of his body. Eventually, Hellboy arrives at the source of the gunfire, finding only a remotely operated gun. Hellboy, he smashes that gun, but then he falls through a trap door in the floor, and then he finds himself in an underground room. Inside that underground room, he hears the ghost of a US soldier saying, "Hellboy, don't. It's a trap." Hellboy doesn't listen to the ghost, though, and he walks on. And in that castle there, Hellboy gets jumped from behind by a beast called a Kriegaffen. A Kriegaffen is a mentally and physically enhanced war ape with cybernetic augmentations. This Kriegaffen knocks Hellboy out. And then, in the darkness, we see the Nazi known as Hermann von Klempt. Last we saw Hermann von Klempt, he was just a Nazi head in a jar. Now he's got himself a mechanical body, and he is back in action. And he has his Kriegaffen war apes doing his bidding for him. And he is joined by Laura Karnstein, who is actually his granddaughter, whose real name is Inger von Klempt. Inger says, "Grandfather?" And Hermann responds, "Yes, granddaughter. At long last we meet." Inger questions, "Did I do well?" Hermann answers, "Excellently well, my dear. Excellent." Conqueror Worm, Chapter 2. Hellboy wakes up from being knocked out. He is in some sort of electroshock harness. Standing over him are Hermann von Klempt, Inger von Klempt, and the Kriegaffen ape. Hellboy and Hermann von Klempt reminisce about their last encounter in South America. Hellboy says to von Klempt, "Hermann von Klempt, it's been a while. 1959, right? You were sucking spinal fluid out of little peasant girls. But I stopped that, didn't I? You're looking good though, Doctor. Your monkey's hair grew back and you grew a whole new body." Hermann responds, "Are you enjoying yourself? This is my Kriegaffen number 10. You destroyed number 9. And 10 will make you pay for it." I've had a new generator installed here in the castle. Volts enough to light up Hamburg, but the harness you are tied directly into it. I do not think it is enough power to kill you, but it is enough to keep you in blind, agonizing pain. And it will keep my Kriegafin entertained. So Herman and Inger, they leave Hellboy in that electroshock harness to be tortured, while the Kriegafin watches, standing on guard. As Herman and Inger walk on, Inger asks her grandfather, I heard that you were involved in something up north. Did it go well? Herman, speaking of the events of the Wake the Devil story arc, answers, Not too well. It ended badly and I returned to South America. But I had been gone too long. All my old colleagues were dead. All my secret projects fallen to ruin. So for the first time since the war, I went back to Germany. I still had a workshop there, hidden under an old cemetery. There I gathered the materials to build a new Kriegaf. As the two of them are talking, Inger notices some sort of soldier chained up to a wall. Herman explains to his granddaughter that they found him when they arrived. They have no idea who he is. He says that Inger can have him, so Inger shoots him several times, dead. Meanwhile, outside of the castle, Roger meets with Lobster Johnson. They introduce themselves to each other, and then they discuss Inger and Herman von Klemt and their history. The two of them, teaming up, enter some caves that lead to right beneath the castle. And under the castle, they find a room of Nazi-created humanoid machines. These machines can somehow sense Roger's electric power within him. Roger starts feeling a little drained. Tells Lobster Johnson, the lightning, the electricity, the machines feel cheated. They want to live. They're taking the lightning out of me. Some of the humanoid machines in the room now spring to life and start attacking the two of them. Lobster Johnson is fighting back, shooting at them. Roger, now a little bit depowered, is lying on the ground. But eventually, Roger crawls over to one of the power cords, and he absorbs the power of the Nazi generator, sucking all the electricity into him and depowering the machines and leaving the castle without electricity. Meanwhile, in another part of the castle, Herman and Inger von Klemt are working with some Nazi soldiers. They are preparing for the Nazi spacecraft from the 1960s to return back to the castle. As they are talking, eventually the effects of Roger sucking all the electricity causes the power in the room they are in to go out. Back over to Hellboy. With the electricity cut, the harness he was wearing is depowered, and Hellboy is now free. With Hellboy now free, he fights and defeats the Kriegafin. As Hellboy begins to walk away, he sees that soldier that Inger von Klemt shot earlier. Somehow he is still alive, this soldier, though. The soldier tells Hellboy, Hellboy. Hellboy asks, who's there? The man responds, a friend. I never believed I would see you again, but now I see the wisdom of it. I was there the night you came into the world. This man, he claims that he was there at Hellboy's birth, way back in the Seed of Destruction story arc. The man continues, I was there that night when you came into this world. I was posing as a soldier then, but really I was an assassin come to kill you. I knew you were coming, what you are, and you and Rama, the destroyer, but that night I saw something else in you. Free will. The chance that you might break the bounds of fate and choose a life. So, I broke with my masters and let you live. 10 years later, I watched lilies grow out of your spilled blood in St. Leonard's Wood, and I knew I had done the right thing. The man is referencing the Nature of the Beast short story we saw in the short story Omnibus. And in that story, some of Hellboy's blood caused lilies to grow. Hellboy questions this mysterious soldier again. Who are you? The man responds, I'm not important, but the thing coming here must be stopped. The man then goes on to explain that during the war, The Nazis somehow managed to make contact with ancient evil beings in space, and one of those evil beings inhabited the scientist Ernst Oeming's dead body, and now that alien being is planning on returning to Earth aboard the Nazi space capsule. The man then gives Hellboy a small device that can be used to trap the evil creature that is coming. The man further says, remember, whatever form it takes, the thing itself is a phantom. Its body will be a tool constructed from the dead pilot, from the spacecraft materials in the air, any matter it can consume. This is the end of me. It was good to see you again. My life has been well spent. Hellboy, to be other than human does not necessarily mean to be less. Remember that. Remember me. Goodbye. The man, he then dies, and he turns back into his true form, which is some sort of other alien. As Hellboy finishes that conversation, Roger finally rejoins Hellboy. Roger tells Hellboy all about teaming up with Lobster Johnson, but then Roger turns around and Lobster is nowhere to be seen. Well, nevertheless, Hellboy and Roger have to jump into action. Elsewhere in that castle, the spacecraft is finally beginning to land. Herman von Klempt is eagerly waiting. He says, "Welcome home, Dr. Oeming." Conqueror Worm, Chapter 3. Hellboy and Roger are planning their attack. Before they head off, though, Hellboy is inspecting the device that was recently given to him. Roger asks, "How does it work?" Hellboy answers, "I didn't think to ask. I just figured that when the time comes, it'll do what it has to do. Let's go." As the Nazi spacecraft is landing, Herman von Klempt tells his granddaughter Inger to put on her gas mask. Inger listens to her grandfather. As the ship lands on top of the castle, gas starts streaming out of it. The gas that streams out of the ship starts blowing on all the Nazi men in the room. Herman, very interested, says, "I was wondering how this would work." All of the Nazi men in the room start being transformed into mindless frog monsters. Herman, he laughs maniacally, saying, "Ha ha ha! It is a cool breeze come to wipe away the sins of man." Inger, in her gas mask, wonders what is happening. What has she done? Inger begins to try and run away, but somehow she is stopped by the ghosts of US soldiers standing in her way. Hellboy and Roger arrive. Herman von Klempt, he attacks Hellboy in a rage, and the two of them fall down below to continue their battling, leaving Roger by himself to deal with the space capsule. Lobster Johnson then reappears, and he tells Roger that the capsule must be destroyed. Roger says, "All right, we'll do it together." Lobster Johnson to this says, "No, the battle is yours alone. Prove yourself." Roger asks, "What about the girl, Inger?" Lobster to this says, "Trust me, she'll pay." Alright, so we got three things going on. Inger, she's fighting the ghosts of dead US soldiers. Roger, he's confronting the space capsule. And Herman von Klempt and Hellboy are battling. Herman von Klempt is still angry with Hellboy for defeating some of his Kriegaffen war apes. Hellboy, he punches Herman and knocks off his robotic head, revealing that Herman's real head is still in a jar inside the chest of his robot body. Herman, he laughs, saying, "Ha! I may only be a head, but I'm still greater than you. I'll see you die." Hellboy retorts, "How often do you get a change of the water in there?" Herman, now just a head in a jar, shoots Hellboy and flies off. And Hellboy, he falls through the floor into the basement below. Back up to the space capsule. The Conqueror Worm emerges from the ship, and it starts devouring all of the transformed men that were turned into frog monsters. Hellboy, now in the basement of the castle, he explores, and he finds some radio equipment that apparently the Nazis used to contact the Ogdru Hem in space. The Ogdru Hem are the children of the Ogdru Jihad. Hellboy, he sees the corpses of the Nazi operators still seated at their consoles. He also opens a cabinet and finds severed heads of several dead saints hooked up to some sort of antenna. This is apparently the Nazis' crude means of replicating the rituals that allowed the ancient people to speak with the Ogdru Hem. Hellboy, when he sees all this, comments to himself, "This is the worst place on Earth." And then a Kriegaffen ape attacks Hellboy again. Hellboy, frustrated, says, "Goddamn Nazi Frankenstein monkey, you don't know when to quit." Hellboy punches the monkey again, knocking him back. Then the corpses in the room start standing and walking and speaking, saying satanic shit. Hellboy, he says to himself, "Oh man, this is just stupid. What the hell did you idiots do here? Screw it. Where's that thing?" Hellboy then tosses a grenade, destroying the Nazi head radio equipment stuff. And then Hellboy runs off. Elsewhere in the castle, Hermann von Klempt, now just a head in a jar again, finds his granddaughter. He asks her, "My darling girl, how are you holding up?" Inger, confused, asks, "What have you done with my men, grandfather?" Hermann answers, "Oh, you saw, the gas. They were changed by it, evolved into the final great race of man. And now they are in the belly of the Conqueror Worm. This is the ultimate destroyer. There is no end to the hunger, and the more it eats, the more it will grow, and on and on and on." Inger asks her grandfather, "How can you control a thing like that?" Hermann reveals he does not plan on controlling the Conqueror Worm, the being from space. He says, "Child, I would not dream of controlling it. Poor girl, now it is time I tell you the whole truth. I was in my shop in Germany working on my Kriegaffen when crippling despair overwhelmed me. I wondered, what purpose is my life? Why do I go on? The glory of Hitler's Third Reich was a lost dream, and my own projects were in ruins, and the last of my old allies were dead, all gone, and I left with nothing. But then I learned the secret at the heart of the Nazi space program, that the great Dr. Oming was strapped into that spacecraft already dead, that he was intended as a vessel for an alien life form, and that life form would be the agent of mankind's demise. The worm is meant to riot. By his breath, he changes man, and then he consumes him, all men, everywhere. There is no escaping the worm. When all is done, the worm will tower over the wasteland he has made. You will then call out to the stars that the thing is accomplished, and that finally will mark the passing of man. Then the 369 children of the Ogdru Jihad will wake and come out of their prisons in the earth and in the sea. And then the Ogdru Jihad will wake, the 7 who are one, the serpent, and they will cast off their chains, come out of their prisons, and burn the earth, make of it a blackened cinder, and that will be the end. I made radio contact with a space capsule, recalling it to Earth. I set all these events in motion. Only later did I learn of your existence. I thank you for aiding me in these final preparations. Now, all I'm going to do is watch." Hermann, he did all of these events not because he wanted to rule the world. No, he was bored with the world. He just wanted to see it be destroyed. Inger asks her grandfather, "But why did you give me the gas mask? Do you love me? Is this some futile attempt to save me?" Hermann answers, "Love? Save? No one is spared, dear. It was only to lessen the effect of the worm's breath, to preserve your human mind, so that you may fully appreciate the end. When you are ready, you may join me." Inger then removes her gas mask, revealing that she too has turned into a frog monster. The only difference being she is still able to think and speak. so this way she can witness the end. Conqueror Worm, Chapter 4, The Conclusion. The Conqueror Worm eats Roger, although it seems to not like the taste of him, so it spits him out. And Roger, when he gets spit out, he lands on the ground right near Hellboy. Hellboy and Roger get reacquainted, and then they start trying to come up with ways to defeat the Conqueror Worm. Hellboy, he tries to use that device that the alien gave him to defeat the worm, but just as he's about to use it, Herman von Klemp's robot body snatches the device from Hellboy and crushes it in his hands. Hellboy, he cries out, "No! God damn it, that thing was working!" Herman von Klempt, in his floating head jar, says, "Stupid brute, you entertain me." Hellboy and Roger start to try to run away. Von Klempt mocks them, saying, "Ha, yes, run! Where will you go? There is no escaping the worm." Elsewhere, we see a transformed Inger von Klempt. She is visited by Grigory Rasputin. Inger expresses her regret that her dream of re-establishing the Nazi Third Reich has turned out to be futile in the face of the Conqueror Worm. Rasputin tells her that she should instead look at this as a new beginning. The worm will destroy the world, but out of the ashes, new life will emerge, a new race of man, and she is the first of that new race. Elsewhere, Hellboy and Roger are still continuing to try and stop the Conqueror Worm. They toss a grenade at it, and it does nothing. Von Klempt is just flying around in his jar, saying, "Ha ha! The worm will lay waste to all! Man, animal, plant, nothing will remain!" The Conqueror Worm then grabs the jar of Herman von Klempt and starts bringing it into itself. So Herman's jar shoots off a little electricity, and that seems to hurt the Conqueror Worm a bit. It doesn't appear to like electricity. Hellboy, seeing this, talks to Roger and says, "You know, the worm, it ate all those other guys, but not you, because you're full of electricity. You sucked all the power out of the castle generators. I wonder if there was some way you could shoot that electricity back out." Roger, thinking on this, says, "Yes, I could do that. Although I would become an empty vessel. I would create a vacuum and draw the ghost of the worm into myself and trap it there. I would hold it prisoner until you decide how best to deal with it." They put the plan into action. Roger discharges all of the energy that he had sucked in himself, and he shocks the worm with it. The Conqueror Worm gets all fried, and then it takes control of Roger's mind. Hellboy, he walks over to Roger. Roger starts spouting demonic shit that the Conqueror Worm would say. He's saying, "Am Jung Ahu Gog Agurum Asrurum Abura." Hellboy, hearing Roger saying all this, tells him to fight it, Roger. You can do it. Come on. Roger's trying to fight the control that the worm has on his mind, but he keeps saying all this demonic gibberish. Hellboy, encouraging Roger, says, "You have to hang on till we can get you down to BPRD." But Roger, he instinctually seems to know that Hellboy has the means to destroy him, that the BPRD put a bomb inside of him. And Roger tells Hellboy that he has to do it. He has to destroy him, to do it now. The Conqueror Worm is inside Roger's head, and if Hellboy has the ability to detonate Roger, then he should do it, as the worm would die too. Hellboy, he pulls out the detonator and he contemplates pushing the button, but he still doesn't want to do it. Roger, he tells Hellboy, "I see what it can do, the worm, what it will do. Hurry, stop it now while it still can be stopped. Hellboy, please do it." Hellboy, he's still got his finger over the trigger. He's thinking of pressing it, but he says, No, you can do this, Roger. You've done a lot of amazing crap in the last couple hours. You're tough. You can hang on till we get you down to the bureau guys." Herman von Klempt, he then flies over to Hellboy and Roger and tells them, "Ignorant troll, I hoped to see you die, but this is better. You're broken. Your friend is lost. You've lost everything. The angel of death has spoken. Herman then starts flying around Roger and says, "Yes, my darling, come forth, worm, and do your work. I am ready to die." Roger, seeing that Hellboy won't press the detonator to kill him, decides to jump into action. Roger grabs on to Herman von Klempt, and then he leaps off the high cliff they are on, down below. Von Klempt, realizing that Roger is holding on to him, starts screaming, "No, not like this! The worm! I want to see the worm!" Roger and Herman von Klempt then smash down on the ground below. Herman von Klempt's head jar shattered when it hit the ground, killing him. Later on, elsewhere, Lobster Johnson finds Inger von Klempt. Lobster Johnson tells her, "Time for you to face the harsher justice of the lobster's claw." Inger is still thinking about what Rasputin told her. She mutters to herself, "You can do nothing against me, for in me is the future, the history of man. I am the future." Lobster Johnson to this says, "You owe too much to the past. You have to pay." Lobster Johnson shoots her a few times, and then he burns his lobster insignia onto her head. Just as he finishes killing her, Hellboy joins him. Hellboy, seeing Lobster Johnson in action, says, "Wow, you really are Lobster Johnson." Hellboy and Lobster Johnson, they then team up and they head outside, and they find Roger's body there. They remove the cover on Roger's chest. They look inside and they theorize that the worm is eating Roger from inside out. Lobster, he then puts a metal rod into Roger's chest, and he draws lightning towards Roger. A lightning bolt from the sky strikes the metal rod, and it goes right into Roger. The lightning manages to kill the Conqueror Worm inside Roger's body. In the process, though, Lobster Johnson's body got fried by the lightning as well, and he is now long dead. Or maybe he was already dead when Hellboy and Roger first arrived, and this was just his spirit lingering. Either way, the mission is complete. Herman and Inger von Klempt are dead. The Conqueror Worm is dead. Hellboy and Roger have saved the day. In the aftermath, Tom Manning, the director of the BPRD, along with Kate Corrigan, arrive at the scene. Hellboy asks Kate, "How's Roger doing?" Kate answers, "Apparently he checks out okay. That lightning really did the trick. Eventually they'll have to install a new generator, but he's fine." Hellboy then tells Kate, "I want you to look out for him, okay?" Kate is a little confused. She asks Hellboy, "Why, where are you going?" Tom Manning then comes over to Hellboy and he says he wants a full report on this, but Hellboy tells Tom to put out his hand, and then he gives Tom the detonator, and he tells Tom, "I quit." Hellboy is disgusted with the BPRD's actions towards Roger, so he is quitting the Bureau in protest. Afterwards, Kate talks to Hellboy some more. She asks him, "So you're really gonna take off?" Hellboy answers, "Yep. It's not just that they planted a bomb on Roger, it's all this other stuff with me. The crown of the apocalypse, the right hand of doom, flowers grown out of my blood." Hellboy, he needs answers. Kate asks, "So where are you going?" Hellboy to this answers, "Africa. I was there once, a long time ago. I liked it. I always meant to go back. It'll be as good a place as any to start." Kate questions, "And after that?" Hellboy answers, "Wherever the wind blows. Also, say goodbye to Abe for me, will ya? Thanks." And with that, Hellboy heads off. He officially leaves the BPRD. Hellboy leaving the BPRD is a status quo that is going to carry on for a very long time. This is why in our Hellboy Omnibus reading order, if you want to just experience Hellboy's story, you can just continue on reading the red highlighted Hellboy books, and that will give you Hellboy's full story and what is going on with him. But if you want to know what is going on with the BPRD and all of the characters we've met over there, that is where you would read all these BPRD omnibus books, as well as the various spin-offs. Now we have a short epilogue. Rasputin, still in the castle, is joined by Hecate. The two of them recount their past interactions in the Wake the Devil story arc. Hecate then says that when the end comes, it will be either her or Hellboy ruling that new world that is to come. Either that or they will both die. But she begins to mock Rasputin, saying, "But you think you can shape these events? I cannot, and I am a goddess, and you are so much less." Rasputin argues back, "I can and I will shape the events." Hecate continues, "You failed 3 times already. You failed at Cavendish Hall, and you died there. You failed in Norway, and now here you failed again, because you're only a ghost." Rasputin, enraged, defends himself, saying that he was chosen by the Ogdru Jihad, and he will free them. Hecate to this says that only Hellboy's right hand can free them, since it was the power that imprisoned them in the first place. And Rasputin, he clearly cannot control Hellboy. Rasputin, angry, he defiantly screams. He explains that he is the one that brought Hellboy into the world, and he is still Hellboy's master. Hecate just dismisses Rasputin, though. Unimpressed with him, she waves some magic and makes him explode. His body then shatters into bone and crumbles into dust. Later on, elsewhere, the single little spark that remains of Rasputin is floating in the air, and Baba Yaga captures it in her hands. She then says to Rasputin, "Ah, poor Rasputin, there is so little left of you, not even enough to light a skull. But you are my son, so I'll keep you in a nutshell, and I'll wear you close to my heart forever." Baba Yaga, she takes that small spark of Rasputin and puts it inside a hollow acorn, which she will now wear around her neck. And with this, we end the Conqueror Worm story arc. Alright, so that was the Conqueror Worm story arc, and this is exactly what I love in the Hellboy stories. This is the kind of story I'm really into, where we have an eccentric villain in this Nazi, Herman von Klempt, who's just a head in a jar, laughing maniacally, trying to bring about the end of the world with this crazy science and bullshit, and bring in this Nazi spacecraft down to Earth, and then inside of it is this Conqueror Worm, who is a huge threat, and you're wondering how are Hellboy and Roger going to be able to defeat this thing. So that was all really exciting. I love the setting in this creepy castle with all these ghosts, these dead saints, decapitated heads hooked up to radios to contact the Ogdru Jihad was a cool concept as well. The mechanical war apes, really fun too. So yeah, so many fun concepts in here. Really cool story arc. I really loved it. I also was intrigued by this Lobster Johnson character and seeing him in here. You know, it definitely makes me want to see his spin-off miniseries as well. I would have liked some more clarity on why he was wearing the Nazi uniform, and was he in fact a ghost? I still am not 100% sure on that, but I think he was. But it's kind of weird how he was also able to, get physical sometimes in here. But all in all, a really fun story arc and a huge status quo shift at the end of this one, with Hellboy quitting the BPRD, going out on his own. So that's going to be intriguing to see, Hellboy's story. And then also, I am intrigued to see the BPRD books as well, and see what's going on with them and their world there without Hellboy, and how they're going to continue to go on. So all in all, Conqueror Worm, fantastic story arc. I'm going to give this one an 8.5 out of 10. Thank you all for watching, and I'll be back in the future with the next part of the Hellboy storyline, which is going to be the Third Wish, the Island, and the Into the Silent Sea story arc in the next video. So I will see you all then there for that.